Hello, everyone. Right, guys. So today's webinar is all about simplifying and streamlining the 1099 process with Xenett. So we're just gonna quickly go through with some of the housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar, so you guys can share with your staff, your people, in case if they are not able to make it. And we'll also be sharing the recording with all those who have registered but are not able to make it today. This is gonna be like about 40 minutes we'll be spending. That also includes question and answers. And as I present, if you guys have any questions in between, feel free to leave them in the chat as well. Right. um, just a quick intro. Those of you who are kind of meeting me for the very first time, I'm Hardik, one of the founder at Xenett. And by profession, I'm an accountant with more than 15 plus years of experience. Right. All right. It the today's outline is gonna be very simple. We're not gonna be talking about like what is 1099 and who should you issue those 1099 and what is W9. We're not gonna get into those basics because I understand that you guys are already expert in like you guys are already knowing what those some of those basic things are. My objective in today's webinar is to help you guys efficiently manage the 1099 process using Xenett. All right. So I'm gonna mainly walking you through over if you had to manage the whole 1099 efficiently in Xenett. I'm gonna share some best tips and tricks. All right. So now I'm gonna take you to Xenett and then show you the 1099 in Excel. So all right. So this is Janet. We're gonna be doing is going into one of the clients. So right now I'm in a demo company, and then this is the 1099 module. All right. Now this module is mainly designed to bring all the different information related to 1099 into one page so that you guys can have like all the information in a consolidated way and you guys can quickly go through. The first thing that I would recommend you guys to quickly do it when you are managing 1099 is you just make sure that you have the config, especially these two accounts. Number one is a source account. So source account as in the like what we are doing here is we're kind of pulling transactions from bank and credit card, right? Because as you guys know that 1099 is actually reported based on the cash basis. So what we are doing is we're simply pulling all the transactions from bank and credit card and then we are showing it here. Now, as you guys know that generally we don't consider any of the transactions from credit card because those are not eligible. So we just exclude it, right? So what we just want to make sure by default we exclude those accounts, but you want to come here and just make sure that you have the related account selected here, right? Sometimes I have seen where you guys may have some bank accounts, maybe some merchant accounts, which are not like a real bank account. So that is why it's very important for you guys to just make sure that you have the right bank account selected here. Okay. Now, it's actually other way around. So the accounts that you are selecting, that means you are excluding transactions for those accounts. So you want to make sure that you leave those accounts unchecked for which you want to pull the transactions from. So just make sure that you read this heading here, the exclude source account. Okay. So that's one. The second thing that you guys want to do is okay. So once you've selected the source account, you want to make sure that you also look at the other side of account, which is a split account. Okay. Now you know that there are certain types of expenses or payments which are eligible for 1099, and then some of these other expenses are not actually eligible, right? So example, let's just say if you are buying inventory which is not actually eligible for that, right? If you are paying someone as a reimbursement which is not eligible. So this is where if there are any such accounts which are, I mean, which you already know that these accounts are not at all eligible for 1099, you want to come here and you just want to exclude those accounts here. Okay, so that's a step number one. All right, so once you've done that, you would then see list of all the vendors and its related information. Here is what you guys should start doing it, where you guys can actually review each of this vendor. And we, in fact, even before I get there, let me actually quickly show you what all information that we are displaying it here. So what we are doing, we are pulling the whole master data from the vendor. Like we show the vendor name, the legal name, when exactly this vendor was created. And then what we do, we also, in fact, we also pull address, email, text ID. Okay. Along with that, we also take the ledger of that vendor and then pulling how much of like what is the amount that you paid to that vendor and for what purpose. So like if you paid them $2,000, let's just say where exactly it is posted right now. So all we are trying to do here is bring all the relevant information for you guys to kind of quickly find it handy. Okay, so that's that. Now, all you have to do is make sure that like you review each of this vendor, and then you identify whether this particular vendor is eligible or not for 1099 purpose. If that vendor is eligible, then you guys like you guys see this column like, hey, for example, let's just say if this vendor was eligible, what you do, you just select yes, and then you'll have to just select the appropriate form, right? So let's just say if this particular vendor is for rent, then you might just select rent. If this is for other income, then you would just select the appropriate form, right? So this is where you are defining that this particular vendor is eligible for this 1099 form. Okay. If that vendor or like any other vendor is not eligible at all, then in that case, what you do is just click on no, and then that particular vendor will be hidden from here. Okay, so that way, even the next year, that vendor would not even show up, right? So basically, you are just defining at the vendor level that this vendor is not eligible at all. Okay, so that's that. Now, one thing actually I also wanted to mention is that by default, if you look at it here, it says meets 1099 threshold. So we are only pulling those vendors that have the payments done above the threshold limit, right? So let's just say if a vendor was only paid, for example, $200, it would not even show up here. Okay. So that way, we kind of already filtering that list for you. Okay. So that is a step number two where you review these vendors and you kind of decide whether this vendor is eligible or not. And if it's not eligible, you would just go ahead and select no, and that vendor will be hidden from here, right? So what you would end up having here is only those vendors which are actually eligible for 1099. Okay, so that's that. Now you would further want to find out like, okay, if once you have all these vendors which are eligible, you would then want to further look into that, okay, do you guys have the address information here, or do you guys have the text ID for them, right? So all this necessary information for you guys to use it for 1099 purpose. Okay, now let's just say if you guys do not have address or text ID information available, and if you wanted to get it from your client, you can actually do it directly from here itself, right? So if you guys are using Xenett's client portal, you can just initiate the questions right here. Like, hey, I wanted to, like, just say ask question on, like, I wanted to get the W-9 for this vendor, right? Or I want, like, whatever the question is, you just have to click on that question icon, and based on that, the question will then show up on the client portal, and accordingly your client can start responding to those information. Okay, so that way it's going to be very, very handy. Same way, in case, let's just say if you have a question on eligibility of any of the particular vendor, let's just say for example Verizon. Okay, say you are not sure whether this vendor is eligible at all or not, and you wanted to ask your colleague about it, you can even initiate the internal comment as well, like, hey, can you help me whether this vendor is eligible or not? So all we are trying to do here is whatever communication that you want to do, whether with your client or whether with your teammate, you should be able to just do it from here. Okay, so that's that. Now, one of the feature that we have here, which is actually really helpful is you can actually request W9 directly from your client. And when your client uploads that W9, what happens behind the scene is Xenett automatically attaches that W9 directly to that vendor in your QuickBooks file. Okay. So you would not have to download that W9 separately, and then you would have to manually upload it into QuickBooks because it's a two-way sync. So whatever document is uploaded or whatever information that you update here, that's gonna go back and sync with your accounting system. Okay, so that's that. Now, with the W9, one of the other feature that we have here is when you click on that W9, we have like on left hand side we have a form, and then on right hand side we have this information here, and there's OCR information here. Like when you click on that OCR doc, what exactly it does, that's gonna read all the information from this form, and then it's going to update it here, right? So that way you would never have to update your vendor profile manually. Okay, so a lot of our customers have really found this very very handy because you don't want to kind of zoom in and zoom out and enter those address manually and then kind of worry about the spelling mistakes and all of those issues. So this OCR has been really really helpful. So uh, I would highly recommend to use that one. Okay, so that's that. And same way, guys, we also have a feature where not only you can request the W9 with your client, but you can also request it from your vendor as well. So there's actually condition for that. What it does is actually it sends an email to your vendor. But for that, you need to have that email address for the vendor. So it's like if there is no email here, this button here, if you look at this last button, that is actually disabled. Okay, because there is like Zenit is not gonna send an email because there is no email. So as long as if you have an email, and if you then wanted to request the W9 directly to your vendor, you just click here, and then there's an email. So this is actually there's a template. Let me actually show you. So there's a predefined template that you have. By default, that's gonna show up for you. But then, in case if you want to make some changes, then you can do that here as well. Okay, so basically, your vendor just receives an email asking to upload W9, and once that vendor uploads the W9, it exactly works the same way. The W9 gets attached with vendor, and then you can just like same way you can open the W9 and you can copy and OCR that information as well. Okay, so that's that. So the whole thing is, guys, like you guys can actually then kind of find out which are the eligible vendors, what are the missing information. You get those information and you update it here. Okay, so that's how you kind of get the information and you update it here. Now, the thing is like the convenience perspective, it's actually very, very easy to update information here because even though you're looking at a table, but this is like a, uh, I would like wherever you click, you can simply update it. So example, I'll give you. So here, when you click on the vendor name, I mean, like in case if you want to update something, you just update it, save it, and that's it, right? So that way updating any of this information here is very very handy. And it's not just with the vendor name or legal name as such, but let's just say address, this address is missing. You just simply click here, and there is an address, you just type in, you click on save, and the address will be updated, uh, obviously in Zenit and obviously in your accounting system as well. Okay, now, while we are here, I would actually like to highlight this particular feature. So I'm not sure if you actually come across the situations, but one of our customer have a specific situation where, okay, so they have a different legal address for the vendor, but then they would like all that the 1099 to be delivered at a different place, right? So it's like all of those contractors come to the work, okay, but so in records, in QuickBooks records, they have all of their offices or home address, but they did not want to deliver it at that address, but they want to deliver it to the different address, right? So what we are doing here is that in case if you wanted to manage a separate address which you do not want to sync it with your accounting system, you can do that, right? So that way, what's going to happen, just for the 1099 purpose, in case if you would like to have a separate address where you would like to deliver all of your 1099, that would be very much possible. You would just have to update that address here, and then just make sure that do not sync with accounting software. Now what this would do is that's not going to disturb. So if they have their original address in QuickBooks, that's not going to be disturbed at all. So that particular feature is also very, very handy. Okay. Now, one thing I would like to show you is while you're reviewing all of these vendors, and let's just say, okay, so as you can see that this particular vendor, Nicole, was paid $1,200, and that $1,200 was paid for contractors and then the travel expense. So when you click on this 1243, you actually see the breakdown of like all these transactions. Now from this, I understand that actually this particular transaction is eligible for 1099. This one is not, because it's more of an expense reimbursement. Okay. So here we also have an ability where in case if you wanted to exclude a specific transaction, you can do that. All you simply have to do is just simply click to exclude, and that's it. So now for the 1099 purpose, Xenett will consider this 1145 amount and not the 1245 or whatever the amount was, right? So that is something, it's also very, very helpful. Okay. Is the W9 attached to the vendor record, or is the information on the W9 entered into the QBO? Both, Debbie. So W9 gets attached to the vendor in QuickBooks. And if you do that OCR, and if you then update your vendor information, let's just say the legal name or address or tax ID, all this information are two-way sync. So that will also be updated into the QuickBooks file as well. What does the communication look like to the vendor? OCR, it's like it's reading the numbers from the document and automatically gonna fill up your form. So it's like it's gonna read the address, the text ID from the document, and then gonna put it into your vendor profile. Okay. Yes, Jamie, you that's what I said. You can actually exclude transactions. Yes, that's right. What does the communication to the vendor look like? I wish I could show you. It's just a normal email, and you can actually show the email template. Let me show you. So when you go to settings, when you go to templates, and in the email, we have a template for W9 request. This is where you can actually set up the text for the email, what exactly the email will look like, and that email will be sent to the vendor. Now, when the vendor receives the email, they will link. So you see the upload W9 URL, which they would just see the link. They would just upload the W9, and that's it. So that's what they're going to be seeing. Okay. All right. One of the things that we are kind of also made it easier for you guys to quickly see which are the new vendors, right? Because see, for the vendors which are repeating in nature, most times you already know who these vendors are, what you're generally paying them. You already have missing information, but you want to then at least find out, like, okay, so let's just say if I'm working on 2025 1099, I want to specifically find out that, hey, which are the new vendors that I've just got them in 2025. So we have just given the filter. So you can, when you click on it, it will kind of highlight this new. So you'll only get to see all the new vendors. So you can see which are those new vendors, what exactly you have paid them for, are they eligible or not. So that way it's going to be very, very handy. Okay. So that's a quick filter. And then we have a missing information here. So let's just say you have all of your eligible vendors, and you then wanted to see, like, okay, out of all these vendors, how many are actually missing the information, right? Now, when I say missing information, it could be your address, it could be your text ID or email. So that way you can quickly filter it. You don't want to always see all the information, all the vendors list. So that way you can quickly filter that. Okay, so that's that. uh, One thing that we have it here, guys, is a status column. So let me talk about that. So we have two statuses in Xenett. One, at the vendor level, and the second at the client level. Now, let me explain what is the vendor level. So let's just say as you are working on each of these vendor, and if you quickly wanted to tag them, right? So consider it as a more like a tag as well. So let's just say you would say, hey, this vendor is all good. It's ready to file. This vendor, I'm kind of waiting on my client to get me the information. So in case if you wanted to assign some sort of statuses to any of these vendors, you can do that. This is mainly for your internal purpose to categorize your vendors as such. Okay. And this statuses can be customized. So when you click on manage status, here you see the vendor level status. You can actually add new statuses, you can delete any of the statuses, you can rename it however you want. So that is again an optional way in case if you wanted to introduce some sort of statuses, right? And just like that, in case if you wanted to leave a note, uh, whatever the note could be, you can also leave a note. So again, these two information, by the way, the status, the note, are like limited to Xenett only. Those two information will not sync with your accounting system. This is more for you because as you're working on it, and if you wanted to make some sort of comment, then you can actually do that. So that's that. The second status that we have is at the client level. Okay. So let's just say if I'm working on 10 client, and if I wanted to assign some sort of status at the client level, I can also do that. So let's just say I finished working on 10 clients, then I might just say I'm kind of done with it. Let's just say I have three clients that I'm still waiting on them to answer, then I can click on waiting on client. So you can also assign the statuses at the client level as well. This is very, very helpful. Let me show you how. So now let's just say if I'm sitting at the firm level, and when you go to insights, and then when you go to 1099 overview, imagine if you have 10, 50, 20, 50, like number of clients. And if you then wanted to see what's going on with each and every client, this is going to be very, very handy. So from the top level, you would know that, hey, you got still various clients where 1099 have not even begun. You have still a few clients where you're still waiting on the client to provide the information. And you have also accounts here, like, hey, you got a total three vendors. Out of that, you are kind of missing some information. So that way, like these are some of these like a very high level statuses and statistics that you can actually track it here. Okay, so that's that. Now let me go back and to 1099 again. I would also like to mention, guys, is that uh, see, Zenit is only facilitating the process. That's not gonna do any of the filing as such for you. So like you will still have to make sure that the 1099s, I mean the delivered, and even the IRS filing is taken care outside. So at least what we are doing here is once you have kind of gathered all this information here, you can export it, right? Right now we are giving you guys export to these two platforms. So if you are using any of these two software, you should be able to easily export the file for these two software, and you can easily import it there, and then you can use that any of these two software to then file your 1099 and also with the IRS filing. Okay. And if you just simply want to export the whole data in a normal Excel, and then if you wanted to then use it to import in any other software, so this is like a standard export Excel that we have it. And then this is eligible vendors transaction. So let's just say you got 30, 40 vendors which are actually eligible for 1099, and you don't want to click one by one to review the transactions. So there's an option here. It says eligible vendors transactions. So when you click on it, that's going to export all of your eligible vendors transactions into Excel, and you can quickly review them in one go. Okay. So that's that. Now we also have a bulk action. So in case if you wanted to select multiple vendors, so let's just say as you're reviewing it and you figured out like, hey, all these vendors that you have it here are actually not eligible for 1099. So you don't have to do one by one, but you could just say no, click on apply, and like the bulk action will be applied. Same way, like in case if they're eligible and if they kind of let's just say eligible for this particular form, you can actually do it that way as well. Okay. And if you wanted to then use the statuses for the bulk action, you can also assign the bulk status as well. Okay. So that's that. Now let me just quickly say, okay. Now I do have one more thing that I wanted to show you, where we recently introduced a new feature called custom fields. So let me show you. Xenett gives you these columns, the additional fields, which is the status, which is a note. But then, in case if you then wanted to introduce some other custom fields by your own, you can also do that. So to do that, you can go to settings, and then inside custom fields, you would see the 1099 field, and then here you can actually create the custom field. Now the custom field, you just give a name. So let's just say you wanted to add a field for entity type. So I'm gonna say entity type. Okay. And then these are all the different kinds of field that you can actually create it. So let's just say this is gonna be the drop down, and then in that drop down I would like to say it's gonna be corp, S corp, like whatever the 1040, right? So you can basically decide these values. Now here there is an option here. It says reset every year. Okay. So the use case for this is, see, this particular custom field that I'm adding, it's mainly for the entity type. Okay. And that entity type is always going to be the same regardless of the year. So if I'm adding this custom field in 2025, even in 2026, 2027, generally you expect that, yeah, the type of entity will remain same. So in that case, you don't want to enable this reset every year, right? So that way, like even in the future, you will always have that value carry forwarded to all the years. But in case if you only wanted to add a custom field, let's just say which is specific to the season, let's just say you wanted to enable review by reviewer, for example, right? And if you then wanted to introduce a, let's just say, checkbox. Now you kind of introducing this checkpoint where you want your reviewer to review each and every vendor. So obviously that value you expect to get reset next year. So that way we have kind of introduced this option where in case if you would like that as a permanent field, then you don't select it, right? But if you then would like to sorry, if you would like to select as a permanent field, yes, then you don't select it. But if you just want to use that field specific to that year, then you select this one. Okay. So again, this is some just in case if you guys have ever need of creating that custom field, you guys should be able to do that. Right. Now let me check the chat and see if there are any questions. Rules have changed with the 1099, so we're going to be updating, like obviously those rules not going to be affect the 2025, but it's going to be from the 2026, so we'll be making some changes to 2026. So thank you. All right, so during review when I set the status box and the 1099 applicable box, how come it does not save? I have to get the check during review when I set the status box and the 1099 applicable box. How come it doesn't save? So Veronica, if you can reach out to support, we can certainly look into that. I mean, ideally it should save, but we can even investigate and find out like why it did not save it. So go ahead, Jamie. I see you have questions. So is there a way to see the expense account when downloading the Excel report? Uh, excuse me. Let me see. All right. So if you let me just see export to Excel, I'm actually gonna export both the Excel and just to see. Okay. So in this particular report where you see this the eligible vendor transaction, we are displaying the account. So I hope that's what you're looking for. And then let me see the other Excel. Yeah, even in the other Excel as well, we are displaying the expense account. So is that what you're looking for? Oh, when I downloaded, it shows AP. Okay, I see. So in case of bill payment, I guess you're talking about. Uh, excuse me. We can actually figure out a way. Yeah. So Because see, right now what it is doing is from the bank account, the immediate transaction which is connected to that is accounts payable, and that is why it's actually picking. But actually, one second, okay? Let me show you. Let me see something. I think that's what we are pulling it here on the screen. Show that expense account in the Excel file, because that's what we are actually doing, because that's how we will run the logic. Even when it is paid to the, like, even if there's a bill payment, we are actually pulling the expense account from the original transaction. That's what we are showing on the screen. I'll get that check as to why it did not show up in the Excel file. All right. Looks like we are good for the day. So thank you very much, guys, for taking time and attending this webinar. I hope you guys have found this helpful. And if so, you guys can then send it to your team members who you think like it's gonna help them. And we all obviously gonna be sending the recording. Meanwhile, we also plan to do some more webinars on a regular basis. So if you guys have some ideas or some topics in mind, do let us know. We'll be happy to look into that, and we'll kind of be setting up more webinars. So stay tuned. We'll be kind of sharing some more information very, very soon. All right. Thank you very much. Take care, and happy less stress free 1099 season ahead. All right.